All right, so we are back. Mike, it's been a while since you've been on the channel. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. How about yourself, Dave?
Yeah, doing good, man. I'm surviving. Yeah, we have a big game that's coming out towards the end of the month. Right now, I am undecided as far as whether or not I'm going to cover said game, which is Final Fantasy 16. It's the next mainline entry of the long-running Final Fantasy series, which has been around for about what 3 decades now at this point. So a lot of people are looking forward to this game. In fact, a lot of people are saying that this is gonna this is gonna get Game of the Year. This is gonna be a Game of the Year nominee, which I guess it's not too far off from being a possibility, considering that the Final Fantasy VII remake also was nominated for Game of the Year it released. Of course, it had no chance in hell of winning, and it didn't win that year. I believe The Last of Us Part 2 won that year. The competition this year is stiff. You have a Zelda game, most recent Zelda game that's the highest rated game that's come out this year. It has like a 95 on Metacritic, universal critical acclaim from all your major gaming journalists. But Final Fantasy 16, a lot of people have faith in this for some strange reason. We have a story. I noticed a story yesterday. Pre-orders reportedly are below what the numbers were for Final Fantasy 15 when that was coming out several years ago at this point. Of course, Final Fantasy 15 went on to sell 10 million copies for a reason, and I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to around that topic. But yeah, apparently Square Enix is they're panicking at this the low pre-order figures. Um,
They say how much lower it is.
they haven't given an an actual figure to the media, but there's a few reasons why this isn't. This isn't to say that Final Fantasy 16 will sell poorly. Of course, it's going to sell a few million copies, but the question is, given that the franchise is this is a franchise that has basically become a household name over the years. It's expected to sell a certain number of copies. So just selling a few million copies, that's not going to cut it. Square Enix, this is their flagship franchise. This is their bread and butter. They need this. They need this game to sell multi-million figures. So why do you think that not too many people are pre-ordering this?
Could be they're not too much of a fan of what they've been showing so far compared to 15. I remember when 15 was out, it seemed like the hype was a lot bigger compared to this.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think there's a little more to it than that. So Square Enix, in regards to their recent track record, they released. Let's start with last year. I'm not going to go back farther, but let's start with last year. So last year, Square Enix released Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, a game that I have yet to cover on the channel. I've been going back and forth as to whether or not I even want to play that piece of shit. But this was Square Enix's version of a Souls-like game. This is a game that was developed by Team Ninja. It was published by Square Enix. It's a game that came out of nowhere. It's a game that no one asked for. Clearly, it's a spin-off, and it released to very middling reviews, just very, very mixed reception. And that holds true for the user score. This is one of the rare games where the meta score is the exact same as the user score. And this did not sell a great deal of units either. This was not a best-selling title for reasons. Then you got to look at Forspoken, which was released on PlayStation 5 and PC. People hated the fuck out of this game. I did cover this game last month, and it's bad. It's a bad game. The devil was in the details when when the demo for this mess was released, and even journalists and various YouTubers were talking shit about this game before the release of the demo. So this had red flags all over it before it came out, and that's why I guess the DLC for this mess only costs like $12. I saw the price on Steam, and they're selling this shit for $12 because they know it's a loss. The production studio, which is the same development studio that developed Final Fantasy 15, same people that developed Final Fantasy 15 developed this game. They were shut down. Square Enix shut that entire studio down, and they siphoned off the employees to other sections of Square Enix. So this is technically the only other game that Luminous Productions has made. They no longer exist. So Square Enix does not have a great track record, and hasn't had a great track record for a long time. A lot of people were mixed on Kingdom Hearts 3 as well. So I think that's one reason, obviously, why people are not pre-ordering 16. Another reason is for what you said earlier, that a lot of people aren't really liking what they're seeing with this game. This is the most recent gameplay footage for Final Fantasy 16. This is an IGN first. And so, just scrolling, you know, scrolling through the video here. Clearly they're going for, you know, a very specific audience, which is a younger audience, but they're going after a very laser-targeted fan base, which is the Devil May Cry fan base. So the developer of, well, the combat designer of Devil May Cry 5 is also the combat developer, you know, the combat lead for this game. You know, it clearly shows in the gameplay, which it looks okay, but I don't know. What do you think is the issue with this gameplay here? Yeah, I want you to say that one more time with the video pause.
Yeah, it's not the traditional Final Fantasy combat. They're going in a completely different direction.
Exactly. Exactly. This is not a Final Fantasy game. I've been saying that's the main issue with Final Fantasy 16. That's what I've been saying the whole time. That's why I'm not looking forward to this. I love Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry is a fantastic series. I have walkthroughs on my channel for Devil May Cry 4 and 5 on the hardest difficulty setting, Hell in Hell mode. That's a mode where you essentially have 4 lives. If you get hit once, you die. If you die 4 times, then the game sends you back to the start of the level, and you have to start all over from the beginning of that stage. And the difficulty that for like the enemies that are in each stage, their health pools is the same as Dante Must Die mode. It's a very difficult challenge. Not just anyone can play that. But I've beaten 4 of the Devil May Cry games on their hardest difficulty, which is Devil May Cry 3, DMC Devil May Cry, the reboot, Devil May Cry 4, and Devil May Cry 5. I love Devil May Cry. It's the best action series in gaming by far. But when it comes to Final Fantasy, I expect a Final Fantasy game, and this is not a Final Fantasy game. And I'm looking at the, you know, I'm looking at the graphics and what have you. And it looks like the presentation of it looks good. The art direction looks good. The voice acting seems fine to me. Even the combat itself doesn't look bad. It's just not Final Fantasy. That's the problem. And there's more issues than that I'm going to highlight based on what they've revealed, because I have seen the PAX footage. You and I, we together sat and watched the PlayStation showcase for Final Fantasy 16, and I'm trying to recall what you said during that time.
I think if I remember myself, they really simplified it by a lot. Like, they're really holding your hand.
Right. Yeah, that I do remember. I do recall you saying that. All right, so based on this gameplay that I was just showing, let's look at some of the comments here. Very pretty graphics, but I don't know. The gameplay is just looking meh to me. Not a fan of the rapid, exploding cacophony of numbers and bright lights. It's a confusing mess. Wish they'd have gone back to a turn-based system. This does not look good. I had an alright impression from previous showings, but this looks like a terrible mashup of action gameplay trying to be an RPG, with way too many numbers and words on screen. I think the fans can still enjoy this, but I don't think this is the game that breaks out of its niche. Let's see. There is a lot going on screen. A lot. Yes, can barely tell what's happening. It seems they are really proud of how flashy this game is, because that's all the gameplay shown so far. So, it's a button masher instead of an RPG. I remember when Final Fantasy games were good, and not just a light show of button mashing and generic anime characters with squeaky voices and a nonsense story on rails. Rest in peace. 6 minutes of gameplay with numbers covering up the screen, and it's so flashy, you can't tell what the heck is going on. Laugh out loud. It would be nice to have a Final Fantasy game where I actually knew what the heck was going on and wasn't a Christmas light show of effects. After playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, this looks so generic to me. Zero hype for this game. And you see some of the fanboy responses too, as I'm scrolling through these. People trying to defend this mess. Not my Final Fantasy. I am not a Final Fantasy fan, so this is someone who's not a fan of the franchise. But this boss looks like some serious grind. You need to blast his shield many times, yikes. Plus, the player is using several advanced skills. Also, I don't get why there are cinematics in the middle of the fight. Not impressed and not going to buy a PS5 for this game.
Already turning off new players or people who are just interested in seeing what it's like.
Yeah, man, it's like, how many times does this company have to fuck up before they get the memo? People complain about the dodge animation. Bad, super abysmal, perfect dodge animation. It shouldn't slow the game down that much or last that long. Just have Clive blink away and go right back almost instantly. Now, they do have another dodge in the game. I don't think the dodge that's showcased in that video is the standard dodge. Of course, if it is, and in the final version, well, they done fucked up. And here we are right here. Too much Devil May Cry in this. Rest in peace, Final Fantasy. Every time IGN does a IGN first, the game turns out to be a dud. This doesn't bode well. And here we have, I've seen a lot of comments like this. I've received comments like this on my channel from past videos that I've made on this game. People are really expecting this game to have like a 90+ Metacritic score. And for something like Final Fantasy, that really doesn't mean anything. I don't see it, dude. I don't see this game getting the scores that people are saying it's going to get. I know that certain gaming journalists are going to overhype and overrate the fuck out of this shit, but they're probably not Final Fantasy fans, Final Fantasy is a very specific thing. Just looking at the gameplay right here, there's nothing that's Final Fantasy about this. If you look at it for what it is, a lot of people are complaining that there's too much that's going on. too much that's going on screen, too many damage numbers. People are complaining about the precision dodge. Too many effects going on the screen. That's why people are saying like it's a light show. It reminds me of the end of like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie where they had like it was literally a light show and it was just a bunch of fucking special effects on screen. That's what this shit looks like. It just looks like a fucking mess. You know, they're chasing the wrong audience, and the producer has even admitted, you know, this is what we're doing. This is the audience that we're going for, which is ridiculous. And so I wanted to bring something up. So the best selling games, there are two best selling games right now in 2023. Hogwarts Legacy right now is the best selling game of the year. It sold 15 million copies within the first 3 weeks of its release, which is insane. It sold more than half of Elden Ring's total lifetime sales within just a few weeks, and it's remained sales-wise, it's remained at the top of the list pretty much since its release. It continues to sell well. Then you have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which has shipped more than 10 million units within, I'd say probably within the first week of its release. So Final Fantasy 16 is, you know, being modeled after the Devil May Cry series. Now, as great as the Devil May Cry games are, if you look at the sales figures for those games, they sell enough for the type of game that they are, but they don't sell multi-million level figures on the scale that Square Enix wants these games to sell. They don't sell Call of Duty numbers. They don't sell like Elden Ring. None of the Devil May Cry games have sold anywhere near those figures, including the last one, which is the highest rated one. Devil May Cry 5 is the best one in the series. That's the best game in the series. And it's only sold a little within a year of its release. It sold, you know, 6.5 million copies. The series as a whole, the whole, you know, series across all platforms has sold 28 million units. And Devil May Cry has been around for 20 years. Could it be that they're chasing the wrong audience? I mean, yeah, it is. And they're not really leaving anything for OG fans to really enjoy. People who don't care for this action shit that they're trying to shove down people's throats. And I even read that the game won't even have. This is what I'm saying. It's not a Final Fantasy game. It's not even going to include an airship. There's no airship. There's no flyable airship in the game. All you can do for traversal is chocobos and walking. That's it. And then Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 was the first Final Fantasy game in years to include an airship. And the car, they made the car the airship in that game. That was the airship in Final Fantasy 15. And before Final Fantasy 15, I think the last Final Fantasy game to have a flyable airship that wasn't a spin-off, I believe, was Final Fantasy 9. It was one of the PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy games. There was no flyable airship in Final Fantasy 10, 12, or 13. And they've removed it again for Final Fantasy 16. And the reason they didn't go open world this time is because of the criticisms of Final Fantasy 15. Which Square Enix, that's another game that Square Enix didn't manage properly. And they released it unfinished. There's already a bunch of red flags with this game. Even if you look at some of the recent, like, you know, marketing trailers and whatnot for this, they're really trying to sell these, they call them these icon fights or whatever, the summons. And the problem with this is that they look scripted. They look extremely scripted, like, especially this. This is on rails. I mean, what do you think of this?
This doesn't even look like Final Fantasy. I would have thought it was a different.
Yeah, this looks like it's trying to do what God of War did back in 2008. When God of War 3 came out and it had those these large, epic boss fights like the Colossus boss fight from God of War 3. It looks like that's what Square Enix is going for, which is a strange direction in 2023. And we've seen games like Yakuza Like a Dragon and Persona 5 do turn-based systems, have turn-based combat systems developed, and both of those games they sold well. I mean, they reviewed well. The fans they liked them. So I mean, I don't understand why Square Enix keeps chasing this younger audience, or believes that they have to keep chasing this crowd, this fan base. It really doesn't make much sense. But the biggest thing is, what's the number one thing that you need in the Final Fantasy game? You need party members. You need, that's what Final Fantasy is gameplay wise. It's supposed to be this series where you manage almost like a small army of characters. And Final Fantasy 16 has party members, but the problem is they're not playable, and you can't control their actions. The party members are controlled exclusively by the AI. According to the previews, I've read a number of the previews, the damage output that they deal to enemies on screen is so minuscule, is so low, that they're really just there on screen for eye candy and nothing else. The only party member that's fully, that you can issue commands to is this dog, which is, bullshit. What are your thoughts on the way that they're handling, or lack thereof, for the party member system?
It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know who made that move. Because especially in the previous games, everyone loves the party system and controlling other characters. So only being able to hold a dog is just insane.
Yeah, that it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, from a lot of the positive comments I've seen for this game, they're not counting in for the things that you should expect in a Final Fantasy game. They're mentioning how, because this is going to be a rated M game, and they're basing a lot of their influence off of Game of Thrones, as far as like the tone of the game and everything. And the preview said there's like a lot of death and gore and blood and whatever else in this game, which, whatever. But gameplay wise, I expect a Final Fantasy product, and this is anything but. Years ago, when they showed the gameplay and they revealed that the combat lead is the same guy who worked on Devil May Cry 5, I was saying back then that it's likely going to be some bullshit, because that means they're making it a character action game, which means you're going to lose other aspects of the gameplay that you would expect, that you should expect for a Final Fantasy title. Like I said, this game is anything but Final Fantasy. They've basically made party members irrelevant. And that's another thing. Since this is, heavily inspired by, gameplay-wise by the Devil May Cry series, one of the reasons Devil May Cry works as a franchise is because it has multiple difficulty options. This game does not have any difficulty options. It has a challenge mode on New Game Plus that apparently makes the game harder. They even said in one of the most recent articles that Square Enix didn't want to make a game that's difficult, because Square Enix, they don't make games for hardcore players. They make games for a casual audience. Yeah, it's right here. I had to search for it. But this is from one of the developers on the, one of the staff members on the game. And I quote, we made sure that enemies aren't so difficult that some players might want to give up. And even when you are defeated, we do our best to make it a bit more manageable on your next attempt. So, that right there is proof enough. This is not going to be a difficult game. There's no multiple difficulty options. To get any sort of, of a decent challenge out of the game, you're going to have to replay it on New Game Plus. The party members are irrelevant. They're controlled exclusively by the AI. There's only one controllable character in this game, And something I've noticed from looking at all the gameplay that I don't see a lot of people talking about, um, this character only uses one weapon. The only time I've seen this Clive character use other weapons is through the icon abilities. So I think he stuck with the sword throughout the entire game.
Wow, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so that's another thing. So like Final Fantasy 15 only had one playable character. Eventually later they added the other party members as playable characters, although the system itself was clunky. But the thing is, they somewhat had to make up for it, and so they gave you multiple weapon classes that you can use. You know, swords, lances, guns, ninja stars, heavy swords, different things like that in that game. And not all the classes were good, but at least you know the attempt at providing weapon variety was there. Final Fantasy 16 clearly isn't going to be that. There's already just enough strikes against this game to you know say that it's going to be some bullshit. People are really thinking that this is going to be this is going to be game of the year over games like Starfield and especially Zelda. Is like that tells me you don't know anything about gaming journalists in the way they view certain franchises. There is no chance in hell that this game is going to win game of the year over a Zelda game, especially one that has a 95 on Metacritic. There's no way that's going to happen. And you know we don't know what the RPG systems are going to be, like how fleshed out it's going to be. But like I said, there's already enough strikes against this game to where it really doesn't matter. It's not a Final Fantasy title, plain and simple. It's targeting an audience from a franchise that consistently with each new entry does not sell but just a few million units. None of the Devil May Cry games individually across all platforms have sold 10 million copies. You know, the series as a whole has sold 28 million, but that's each game in the series across all platforms over a span of 2 decades. Yeah, so this is not going to sell the numbers that Square Enix is thinking it's going to sell or wanting it to, needing it to sell. I'm sure the game will do just fine, but this is not a Game of the Year contender.
I don't think it'll be a wake up call from either.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think Square Enix isn't going to learn a damn thing from this. Like I said, this company is hard headed. They got some hard headed ass people working over there. Yeah, one thing that the producer said that I actually agree with. I'm gonna pull that up. So one thing that the producer of the game said recently that I agree with is he said that he's discussed with the higher ups at Square Enix to remove the numbers in the titles for the Final Fantasy games. What do you think about that?
Yeah, eventually that's something they'll have to do. I mean, it will get tiring just gaming Final Fantasy 20, Final Fantasy 25, Final Fantasy 30. Yeah, I mean, eventually they're definitely gonna have to go that route.
Yeah, because they're also the series is based on the Roman numeral naming system, and the higher they go, the worse it's going to get. By the time they get to 20, people are going to be like, "What the fuck is that?" And see, they're going. I actually agree with them because like the newer they're going for this new young audience, and a lot of these people have never played a Final Fantasy game. Yet you still have people asking like, does this game connect with this? Do I have to play? I don't want to have to play 14 games or 15 games to understand what the hell is going on in 16. And they don't understand that the series is an anthology. It's an anthology series, right? So each entry is different from the last. But the numbers aren't really helping to convey that point across. It's probably best that they drop the number system as soon as possible and just.
You actually brought that up.
But see, if they do drop the numbers, right, that creates another issue because you have they milk the franchise. They've milked the franchise so much over the years that they have all these spinoffs. So, you know, the numbers help distinguish the mainline entries from the spin-off games. So if they drop the numbers, how are you going to be able to tell the mainline from the, you know, the mainline titles from the spin-offs? That's why I'm saying Final Fantasy doesn't just need to drop the numbers. Final Fantasy, the whole series needs to be rebooted. Like they need to do, even if they just do it as a soft reboot, they need to go back to the drawing board and start over. And so a lot of people are, you know, will ask like, well, how do you, you know, how do you reboot an anthology series? Well, the same way you reboot anything else. So a good example is Mortal Kombat 1. Before NetherRealm revealed what the new Mortal Kombat game was going to be, everyone was calling it Mortal Kombat 12. Well, you know, the story had finished. It had ended in Mortal Kombat 11, and the timeline had been reset. So now they're calling the new game Mortal Kombat 1 to show that it's a soft reboot. It's still a continuation, but it's a reboot of the story. You know, it's the same characters, but different versions, new versions of established legacy characters from that series. Square Enix could do something similar with Final Fantasy, and I think that would be for the best because at this point, you can't tell what a Final Fantasy game is. They don't know what a Final Fantasy game is anymore.
Yeah.
It's whatever they say it is, basically. So, you know, that they could have done that with Final Fantasy 16 and just said, yeah, this is a reboot of the series. But you know, stupidity and ignorance wins the day. So yeah, man, I'm not looking forward to this game. Some aspects of it look okay. I don't think it's going to be a bad game per se, but it's definitely not going to be a good Final Fantasy game. That's for damn sure. And I don't know if I'm going to cover this or not. I may leave it up to the channel, or I may decide on my own. I'm not really certain at this point, but yeah, what do you think? What do you think about Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be good. I think Final Fantasy 7 Part 2 is gonna just they're gonna look over for that just to hold them up again.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the remake part two. Yeah, they came out recently and said that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is still coming out this year. You know, their focus should be entirely on Final Fantasy 16. Apparently, the game's not hitting the pre-order numbers that they needed to hit. So yeah, we just wanted to remind you that you'll see Cloud and Party again in a few months. It's rather sad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what some of the comments are. If they do away with numbers and instead go with subtitles or something, then it'll make them seem more like spin-offs than mainline games. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. This person says ditching the numbers isn't necessary. A quick search into anyone's preferred search engine will quickly provide a result of no when asked, do I need to play the previous entry? So this person is assuming that people do research like this on video games, and the vast majority of people don't.
Yeah, they don't bother.
If you've ever stepped inside a GameStop and you hear some of the questions that normal people, you know, just average everyday consumers ask the employees when they enter the store, they don't know, they don't do any research on this shit. You know, it's up to the company to manage their fucking, you know, to manage their own franchise. It's not the consumer's job to do a bunch of footwork. You know? Looking forward to playing Final Fantasy 2K24. Oh, oh, that's the best comment. That's the best comment I've read in a long time. Oh man. Yeah, man, this is gonna be some fucking nonsense. This is gonna be some fucking nonsense, man. All you gotta do is look at the sales numbers of the Devil May Cry series. It's not gonna be that, dude. And even if I before I end the video here, even if I pull up the last mainline entry, right? Final Fantasy 15, it did eventually sell 10 million copies, but you also have to take into account that the game was released on multiple platforms. and it was heavily marketed. Final Fantasy 15 is one of the most heavily marketed video games ever, and there was a lot of anticipation for it because it's the final version of a game that people had been expecting for 10 years with Final Fantasy Versus 13. Final Fantasy 16, for the time being, is only being released on one platform, and there's been a marketing push for it, but not to the level of Final Fantasy 15. And then when you take into account other things, the fact that it's not an open world game, the fact that it clearly is not a Final Fantasy game, it's a character action game like Devil May Cry, which not everyone cares for. The party member system is fucked up. No fucking airship. I mean, when you take into account all these things, it's like it makes sense why people are, not pre-ordering the game right now. So, yeah. Well, good luck, Square Enix. I've been saying it for years, man. You motherfuckers just keep fucking up, and you don't want to fucking listen to any goddamn body, you know. And then these fucking gaming journalists overrated the fuck out of the Final Fantasy VII remake, but how many copies did that game sell? So the game sold, as far as we know for the time being, it sold over 5 million units, probably closer to 7 now. But see, this is Final Fantasy VII. This is the most popular game in the series. It easily should have sold 10 million, right? But that game was also unfinished. It took 5% it took the intro of the original game and blew it up to 30 hours. Yeah, and the rest of the entries are going to be episodic. So if you want the complete story, you're going to have to buy the next game in the series. It is what it is, man. Yeah, any final thoughts?
It's just sad to see Square Enix in this state. I mean, they're missing a simple skill just to listen, but they don't want to do that.
Yeah. It's funny, their CEO was replaced recently, and they're still fucking up. Yeah, man. Oh well. I might cover the game, I might not. We'll just have to see.